The sound of shattered glass echoed through the grand marble hallway just seconds before another expensive vase crashed onto the polished floor. Housekeepers froze. Nannies quietly stepped back. Security guards exchanged nervous looks, knowing exactly what had happened again. In the middle of one of the most luxurious mansions in the city stood two little girls with matching faces, tear-filled eyes, and hearts that nobody had taken the time to understand. They had already driven away 12 nannies in less than a year, and the richest man in the state was beginning to believe that no one on earth could ever help his daughters. But on that same bright morning, a quiet single father pushing a janitor's cleaning cart walked into their lives, carrying nothing more than a mop, a worn lunchbox, and a heart full of love that money could never buy. Before we begin this emotional journey, please take a moment to like this video, leave a comment, share it with your friends, and subscribe to Heartwarming Tales if you believe kindness and second chances can change lives forever. The billionaire's name was Alaric Sterling, a technology entrepreneur whose companies reached across continents. Business magazines called him a genius. Investors admired his fearless decisions. Newspapers celebrated his wealth. Yet behind the giant gates of Sterling Manor, there was no happiness. 3 years earlier, his beloved wife had passed away after a sudden illness, leaving behind their identical twin daughters, 6-year-old Marin and Selah. The tragedy broke the family in ways that expensive therapy, luxury vacations, and endless gifts could never repair. Alaric buried himself in work because it hurt too much to face the empty rooms that once echoed with laughter. The twins were left surrounded by strangers who came and went, each promising to help, each leaving in frustration after only a few weeks. The girls had become famous among domestic workers. They refused to eat, locked themselves in closets, colored on priceless paintings, released the family's expensive dogs into the neighborhood, and somehow always found creative ways to chase every caretaker away. The staff called them impossible, but no one noticed the quiet moments when the twins secretly hugged each other while looking at old family photographs, silently wishing their mother would somehow come back. Every morning another employee entered the mansion with hope and left with disappointment. Alaric watched it all happen with growing guilt. He loved his daughters more than anything, but he no longer knew how to reach them. Every attempt to discipline them only made them withdraw further into sadness and anger. Meanwhile, across town, Rowan Hale woke before sunrise inside a tiny apartment that barely had enough room for himself and his 8-year-old son, Eli. Life had never been easy for Rowan. His wife had died during childbirth years ago, leaving him to learn how to become both mother and father overnight. He worked long hours as a janitor for Sterling Industries, cleaning offices and occasionally helping maintain the billionaire's mansion. Every evening he hurried home to cook simple meals, help Eli with homework, and read bedtime stories borrowed from the local library because buying books wasn't always possible. Although money was scarce, their apartment overflowed with laughter, homemade drawings taped to the walls, and little traditions that made every day meaningful. Rowan believed children needed patience before punishment and listening before lecturing. Those lessons had been learned through years of mistakes, sleepless nights, and unconditional love. One sunny afternoon Rowan was assigned to clean a hallway inside Sterling Manor after another nanny had suddenly resigned. As he quietly mopped the floor, he noticed 2 pairs of tiny shoes peeking from beneath a grand staircase. Instead of calling security, he gently sat on the floor nearby without saying a word. Several silent minutes passed before curious eyes looked toward him. The twins expected another adult to scold them, but Rowan simply continued polishing his bucket while humming a cheerful tune Eli loved at home. Eventually Marin slowly crawled out, followed by Selah. They watched him carefully, confused by his calmness. Rowan reached into his lunchbox and pulled out 2 homemade oatmeal cookies wrapped in paper. He smiled warmly and placed them on the floor before returning to work without asking for anything in return. That small act planted the first seed of trust. The following week Rowan returned to clean another section of the mansion. This time the twins were waiting. They did not smile, but neither did they run away. Rowan showed them how soap bubbles could reflect tiny rainbows when sunlight touched them. He folded paper birds from old cleaning schedules and let them glide through the air. He never treated the girls like problems waiting to be fixed. He treated them like children carrying invisible pain. Slowly, impossible things began happening. The girls started eating breakfast. They stopped breaking furniture. They even laughed. Housekeepers whispered in disbelief as the twins helped Rowan water flowers instead of throwing them across the garden. Security cameras captured them carefully placing birdseed on the lawn while Rowan explained why every living creature deserved kindness. For the first time since their mother's death, the mansion sounded alive again. Alaric could hardly believe what he was seeing. One evening he returned home early expecting another disaster, only to find his daughters sitting on the kitchen floor helping Rowan's son Eli decorate homemade cupcakes. Flour covered everyone's clothes, frosting covered half the table, and joyful laughter filled every corner of the room. It was messy. It was loud. It was beautiful. The billionaire quietly stood in the doorway, realizing something priceless had returned to his home. Hope. Over the following months Rowan never asked for promotions or rewards. Cleaning floors remained part of his daily responsibilities. Yet somehow his greatest work happened between sweeping hallways and emptying trash bins. He organized simple treasure hunts in the garden, taught the twins how to plant vegetables, encouraged them to write letters to their mother whenever sadness became overwhelming, and reminded them that loving someone never truly ended just because they could no longer be seen. Eli became like the brother the girls had never had. Together they built cardboard castles, rescued injured birds, and spent sunny afternoons inventing imaginary adventures that cost absolutely nothing. For the first time in years, the mansion no longer felt like an expensive museum. It felt like a family home. One rainy afternoon Alaric accidentally discovered a notebook Rowan carried everywhere. Inside were careful observations about the twins, not complaints, but loving reminders. Marin smiles whenever someone notices her drawings. Selah becomes anxious during thunderstorms because they remind her of the night their mother died. Give them choices instead of commands. Hug them before asking questions. Reading those pages left the billionaire speechless. Every expensive expert had focused on controlling his daughter's behavior. Rowan had focused on healing their hearts. That realization forced Alaric to confront painful truths about himself. He had spent years trying to replace his absence with luxury, believing bigger gifts could somehow fill the emptiness left behind by grief. Instead, his daughters had simply wanted their father. The next morning Alaric cancelled several international business meetings and spent the day with his children. They baked cookies together, planted flowers beside their mother's favorite tree, and shared memories through tears and smiles. It was awkward at first, but Rowan quietly encouraged him from the background without ever taking credit. As seasons changed, so did everyone inside Sterling Manor. The mansion became known among employees as a place filled with warmth instead of tension. Staff members smiled more. Family dinners returned. Even the twins' teachers noticed dramatic improvements at school. Their grades improved, they made friends, and the angry outbursts slowly disappeared. Then life tested everyone once again. One afternoon Eli suddenly collapsed during a school sports event. Doctors later discovered he needed urgent heart surgery. The procedure offered hope, but the medical costs were far beyond Rowan's modest income. He quietly began working extra night shifts while pretending everything was fine, refusing to burden anyone with his struggles. The stress slowly showed on his tired face. When Marin and Selah overheard hospital conversations, they immediately understood something was wrong. The girls secretly gathered every birthday gift, toy collection, and allowance they owned, placing everything into a small wooden box decorated with hand-painted hearts. They believed selling their treasures might help save the boy who had become their brother. When Rowan discovered the box, tears streamed down his face. Before he could explain that it wasn't enough, Alaric stepped forward. The billionaire had witnessed everything. Without hesitation he arranged the surgery, covered every medical expense, and personally promised Rowan that Eli would receive the very best care available anywhere in the country. But he made one request in return. He wanted Rowan to remain part of the family's life forever, not as a janitor alone, but as the person who had reminded them what love truly looked like. The surgery was successful. Weeks later Eli returned home smiling, weaker than before but filled with gratitude. The twins greeted him with handmade welcome banners stretching across the mansion entrance. Even hardened security guards struggled to hide their tears. On a bright spring afternoon the Sterling Foundation announced a new nationwide program supporting single parents, grieving children, and struggling families. Instead of placing Rowan's name on the building, he requested something simpler. He wanted every family entering those doors to feel seen, heard, and loved before anything else. Years later visitors often admired the luxurious mansion, but those who truly knew the story understood its greatest treasure had never been the priceless artwork, sparkling chandeliers, or expensive cars parked outside. Its greatest treasure had been a humble single father carrying a mop who chose compassion over judgment. The billionaire had spent years searching for someone strong enough to handle his daughters. In the end, it wasn't wealth, prestige, or professional training that changed everything. It was patience. It was kindness. It was showing two broken little girls that they were never too difficult to deserve unconditional love. If this story touched your heart, please like this video, leave a heartfelt comment, share it with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to Heartwarming Tales so more people can discover stories that remind us humanity is still alive. Special request: comment below with the words, "Kindness changes everything," if you believe one caring heart can transform an entire family. Sometimes the greatest miracles never arrive wearing expensive suits or carrying impressive titles. Sometimes they arrive pushing a simple cleaning cart, quietly proving that love, patience, and compassion can accomplish what money never could. And long after fortunes rise and fall, those simple acts of kindness become the richest legacy anyone could ever leave behind.